Welcome back to the WTF Podcast. My name is Molly Smith, and I'm on a mission to equip 1 million people with the tools to recognize when they're in the funk, but more importantly, how to pivot out of it. By tuning in today, you've joined me on this mission, and I'm so glad that you are here. In today's episode, we are talking about the slow, sneaky funk so many high achievers land in without realizing it. The kind that keeps you saying you're going to do the thing, and then you don't. It's not because you're lazy. It's not because you don't want it. It's because your mind keeps pulling the strings. My guest today has spent years studying this exact pattern, what he calls internal resistance. Kam grew up with big expectations, little support, and a whole lot of pressure to prove himself. And like many of us, he found himself chasing accomplishment after accomplishment, thinking the next one would make him feel enough. But underneath it all were those unconscious tricks, bottlenecks, avoidance patterns, and even authority issues that were keeping him stuck. If you have ever wondered, why can't I just do the thing I say I want to do? This conversation is going to make you feel seen in the best way. So let's dive in with Kam Knight. Hey, Kam.
Hey, Molly, thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited for this conversation, and I'm so excited about the work that you are doing. I think it's fascinating. I think it is very relatable because I think everybody's been in that place where they've wanted to do something and it's like they can't figure out how to get going. Let's back up a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your growing up. You mentioned that there were high expectations and
Yep.
not a lot of support. So share a little bit of background with our audience.
All right, sure. So I have parents who were very much wanting me to do a lot and
Okay.
achieve a lot, get good grades. Unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of support. And at the same time, I, in a lot of ways, grew up on television. And in many ways, I learned a lot of what life was supposed to be about through television, meaning television made me feel like it was all about the external, that I needed to have a big house, nice car, a prestigious job, a lot of money in my bank account to feel worthy and valuable. So that combination created a lot of drive in me to perform and do better. And what I tell people is, although I've had my fair share of success, in a lot of ways, I feel like I missed the mark, or the success was much more difficult and stressful than it needed to be.
Yeah.
And that happened when I was in high school trying to get into a good college because I wanted to get better grades. Once I got into college, getting a good job, I started off as an accountant. So I wanted to get a job at the Big Five firm. Back then it was a Big Five, now it's a
Yep.
Big Four.
Yeah.
And though I landed a good job, it wasn't with one of the big firms. And then it kind of always was there, this desire to do more, do something different, exercise, get fit, and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And again, it was this, I would start and maybe I'd make some progress. If if I did make progress, I would stop before the progress actually showed itself.
Yeah.
And if I was actually making progress, I would sabotage myself. And I kind of kept doing it over and over. And then at a certain point, I just had this wonder of like, why is it if I want to do something, I know what to do, I know how to do it, and I have the motivation to do it, but for one reason or another, I can't do it. And that question lingered in my mind for years and decades. And the more I felt stuck, I wondered why. Why can't I just do this thing and get the result that I wanted? And the more books I read, coaching I did, and seminars I attended, the more I learned about the complexities of the human brain. And a lot of the stuff that I was kind of hearing, or at least my mind was picking up, was, oh, this thing will stop you. You have to be careful of that, otherwise it'll get in your way. Or these are things that can be a hindrance.
Yeah.
And over time, my mind kind of was like, wait a minute, there's a part of our brain designed to hold us back. There's a part of our mind built to keep us from growing and making progress. And I call this part resistance. And it is this brick wall that we hit anytime that we want to do something, but we can't no matter how much we want to do it.
So that is innate, that is inherent in all of us. We have
Yeah.
this brick wall. Now, I'll tell you in my studies and what I've come across is, the idea of the ego or the brain trying to keep you safe, conserve
Yeah.
energy. And so anytime you're doing something that's new or has a perceived risk, I have found that my inner critic comes out and
Yeah.
it's like, blah, 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 like you're not good enough, or whatever it is to try to keep me stuck where I am. So
Yeah.
do you ascribe to the same thing? Is that what you've found with your studies and with the work that you do? Of
Yeah, that's in many ways, that's part of it, though it gets even deeper than that.
course.
And I think what would be really helpful for your audience to understand is the part of the brain that creates wants and desires
Yes.
works separately and independent of the part that allows us to act on that desire. So this is really important. So I'm going to repeat
Interesting.
it. The
Yes.
part of the brain that creates wants works separately from the part that actually allows us to act on the want. So we have one part of the brain that's creating wants, and in a way, it's creating endless wants one after another. And it doesn't check to see if we have the time, energy, or resources to achieve the want. It simply creates want. So this part of the brain, it wasn't built to analyze our want, to see if our want is safe or we're doing. It's
Yeah.
just really a on-off switch that just triggers want.
Sure.
And then we have another part of the brain that actually evaluates that want to see if it's safe or worth doing. And this is the part that I call resistance. And the way this part of the brain works is that anytime we have a want, desire, there's a decision or course of action that stands before us, it gets evaluated by this part of the brain, but using a whole host of criterias. And if the decision is not in line with any of the criterias, it will prevent
Stop.
actions. Yeah. So,
Interesting.
so a great way to think of this is think about standing before a panel of judges or board of directors. Every decision that comes up must go through them. And if even one of the members is against the idea, it
Yeah.
won't pass.
Yeah.
So that desire goes through all these criterias, and all the criterias kind of have to give the green light. And if they don't, it doesn't pass. Now, you mentioned this thing about this inner critic that says, no, you shouldn't do this and whatever.
Yeah.
Once the resistance decides whether you should do it or not, then you get this inner critic coming up saying, this might be too hard, or we should put it off until later, or it will manifest in a lot of ways. And in a lot of ways, when you talk about the inner critic, it's really what I call the tricks of resistance. So, what's
Okay.
really even more fascinating about this is when the brain wants to stop us from doing something, it doesn't tell us that it is. It doesn't say, hey, Molly, this thing that you want to do that doesn't, line up with these criteria, so I can't let you do it. Nope, that is not what happens. Resistance shows up other ways. In fact, resistance uses manipulative tricks to keep us from doing things, and it has all sorts of tricks up its sleeves. So, this model of resistance that I am trying to help people understand is that it begins with wants,
Yeah.
then that wants get evaluated by resistance using the criteria, and then when the brain stops us, again, it doesn't tell us it's stopping us, but it uses these tricks. And these tricks can be so many different things. I'll give a couple examples.
Please.
Yeah.
Please.
One of the tricks is that we'll simply forget the goal or the activity that we want to do. And a lot of times we think it's because we have a bad memory, but what I teach people is that our brain is designed to forget and it's actively making us forget. And there's different reasons why it'll make us forget. One of the reasons is we just come across too much information for it to store. So it
Right.
has to get rid of a lot of
Filter.
it and,
Yeah.
yeah, filter and keep what's important. But another reason it makes us forget is to keep us from doing the things that it doesn't want us to do. And it seems very sneaky and sly, and it is, because once we forget, we not only forget that we were supposed to do something, but we forget that we even made a commitment oftentimes. So
Right.
that's one trick. Another trick is we'll get overwhelmed. So have you ever started something that when you finish, you're like, that wasn't so bad?
Yes,
Yeah.
but the thought process around actually starting feels so overwhelming that
Yes.
it keeps you stuck.
Exactly. So that's the trick. Because you feel overwhelmed,
Yeah.
you get exhausted just thinking about it. And
Yes.
because you get exhausted, you don't want to do it. And as soon as you don't do it, resistance wins. And the tricks, what I like to help people understand is there's the resistance has all sorts of its tricks and it can go to great lengths. I will even go as far as to say a lot of times when we get into an accident or we fall ill, it's usually because of resistance. There's something that we want to do, and we're making so much progress that it's a last ditch effort by
Yeah.
resistance to really put the brakes in
Yeah.
our lives. Because when we get sick, there's nothing we can do. Like all our energy and motivation's gone and we
Done.
can't push
Yeah.
through it.
Yeah.
And that's a perfect way for resistance to keep us from moving forward. So
Yeah.
these are just a couple examples of tricks. We haven't really got into the criteria yet. We can do that more, but I want you to take the lead on it. But I
Yeah.
also want people to understand that both our wants and our resistance can kind of get in our way. It's
Absolutely.
yeah. So
Okay, so can you give me one example from your life where you had one of these tricks pop up and you recognized it and were able to move through it? So
okay,
give me a real life here.
okay. I have a lot of ones, but I'll
Oh,
give you a
sure.
really good one.
Okay.
So I have written a dozen books, and yeah, and this was all prior to Pet ChatGPT, when
Sure.
took months and years to write a book.
To write a book, sure.
Yeah, and in the beginning, in some ways, I got lucky because I was self-publishing when self-publishing was first coming out.
Sure.
And so at the time, if you wanted a book on my topic, mine was the only one available. So I did pretty well without marketing myself. And then there came a point where a lot more people were self-publishing or publishing got bigger and it was harder to be seen. And then it was time to market myself. But I had a lot of resistance. So back then, I wasn't as fluent in my ability to talk and communicate or even
Sure.
put myself out there. In
Sure.
fact, it was kind of a scary experience. And every time I would finish a book, or start a book, I would be like, oh, this is the book that will make me confident. This is a book where people will be like, yeah, Cam knows what he's talking about. And this is the one that
Yeah.
I'm going to kind of introduce myself to the world.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I'd finish that book, I would have an idea for another book. And it's like, no, I got to write this book. This is a good one. And I did that. And now I have a dozen books. So what I didn't realize is that my books was a resistance, the trick the resistance was using. Because as long as I was spending time on the books, I wasn't putting myself out there and marketing myself. And it was a perfect way. And because the book took months and years, I could
Yeah.
avoid putting myself out there,
Yeah.
avoid the feedback and criticism and all of that for months and years. And then when I finally realized it, I had to tell myself no more writing books.
No more writing books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when people got to know me eventually, they knew I was an author and they were always asking me, hey, what book are you working on? What's the next book? I'm like, I'm not writing anymore because that was my trick. It was a perfect way resistance was using to keep me from avoiding this bigger thing that I felt uncomfortable doing. So yeah,
Oh my gosh.
I know it's
So
crazy, right?
that
So that's
that
just one trick.
that is crazy because it's almost like the writing of the book was the coping mechanism,
Yes.
right? Now, that's a as far as coping mechanisms go, that's a pretty productive one. My first coping mechanism that I had to release was drinking the 1 to 3 glasses of wine every
Yeah.
day, right?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
binge scrolling or binge watching or whatever. But that is truly
Fascinating.
fascinating. So
Yeah.
you've written 12 books. Was it during the writing or after the writing of the last book that you were like, oh, this is actually keeping me stuck?
By the 10th book, I realized that writing was a resistance for me.
Yeah.
But because there was so much more, the resistance was so strong, resistance convinced me to write two more before
I
I
get it.
fully said no
I get
more.
it.
And not to say that like I wrote two right away, but I realized I was onto the trick of the resistance
Yeah.
and I was pushing past my comfort zone to start marketing myself. And then, ideas constantly were coming up for books.
Yeah.
And eventually 2 more did come out.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, Molly, like my mind's storing up really amazing ideas for other books. Like really, really good stuff that I could write. But I do know as soon as I get into writing, a lot of the other stuff that I've been building and trying to move forward
Follow the
will
wayside.
halter. And
Yeah.
there is something you said that I do want to rip on, like because you
Yeah.
talked about
Let's do it.
drinking 1 to 3 glasses.
Mhm.
So these are the more obvious and commonly known forms of resistance,
Yes.
which includes television, doom scrolling, scrolling on social media, video
Yeah.
games,
Yeah.
even drinking and alcohol. Because when we're doing those things, we know we should be doing something else.
100%.
Yeah, in a way, we know we're procrastinating. But when the tricks get manipulated, like what I described, it covers its own track. So we don't think it's tricks. And that's why we fall for them. So one of the things I say is the thing about the manipulative tricks is that you wouldn't think of them as tricks, which is why they work so well and why we
Yeah.
so easily fall for them. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so you talked a little bit about criteria earlier.
Yeah.
Let's dive into that a little bit.
Yeah. So again, if when a desire or want stands before us, it gets evaluated by the brain resistance to see if we
Yeah.
should do it. And it
Yeah.
uses a lot of criteria. Some of the more commonly known ones that gets talked about and are kind of pretty intuitive includes beliefs, habits, and comfort zones.
Yeah.
So beliefs are anything that we believe to be true, to be possible, or possible for us. And if the brain doesn't believe something is possible or possible for us, it'll prevent us from doing it. Makes sense, right?
Yes.
And then same thing with habits. If we have grown up with habit, let's just use a simple example of eating junk food.
Sure.
That's a habit. We don't think about doing it. It's just like an automatic process that
Right.
goes on. But now we want to shift to getting healthy,
Right.
to dieting and exercise. Well, that's a different habit.
Yes.
This new thing goes against our old habit. So resistance will say, oh, wait, this is not our
Right.
habit. So we can't do it. And then it'll prevent us. Comfort zone is pretty similar. Comfort zone is a zone of comfort or knowing. And in many ways, it's a zone of knowing because majority of our comfort zone isn't necessarily comfortable. It's just a place where we know what to do and how to do it. And
Yes.
there isn't a lot of mental strain to learn something new or different.
Conserving energy.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly.
Mhm.
So anytime we do something that might take us out of our comfort zone, resistance will come up. It's like, hey, we haven't done this before. We don't know
Yeah.
what's going to happen. And
Right.
it's better to stay here than to go there. So these are some of the
Good.
commonly known reasons.
Okay.
But the criteria go pretty deep. Like the brain will look at your self image. So what I mean by that is a lot of us have created a self image that we're cool, studious, tech savvy, or that we're this great artist, musician, comedian, or we have this great story.
Right.
Even though we think that, we still won't study, apply ourselves, or put ourselves out there because if things don't go well, we have to face the fact that we're not this great self image we created for ourselves.
Right.
So oftentimes it's much easier to not do the thing and hold on to that self image than to do it and prove ourselves wrong.
Right.
So a lot of times the brain will say, well, if we do this, it might damage our self image. And so instead of damaging it, we're just not going to do it and just continue to pretend like we're this great, cool person that we are. So that's one. Another is that a lot of times the brain will keep us from doing something not because it's making us resist a task or activity, but what finishing or completing that task or activity will lead to our brain. So this is a pattern that I
Oh.
see a lot with authors, inspiring authors. So many people want to write a book, tell their story, and get their message out into the world. And now with self-publishing becoming easier than ever, I can tell somebody some really simple tips and tricks to quickly write and publish their books. And many will start, Molly, but very few will finish.
Finish.
Why?
Yeah.
Because finishing will mean facing something bigger that they're avoiding. Because
Yes.
once you finish the book, you have to market it.
Yes.
And when you market it, you have to receive feedback and criticism.
Yeah.
Some people's brain is not at a place to receive feedback and criticism. So it'll make you procrastinate and sabotage on working on the book now so you don't have to face something bigger later. And this is a kind of a pattern that a lot of us men experience, and show you what I mean.
Okay.
So as humans, many men have a desire to meet and interact with the opposite sex. Unfortunately, many men are afraid of the opposite sex. So they'll tell themselves like, when I have that big house or nice car, I'll feel more confident
Right.
to approach women. But they'll always procrastinate on getting that big house or car because doing so will mean they're one step closer to confronting their fear of women. So
Yeah.
they might have a goal of doing or getting something, but that goal might mean that they're one step closer to something bigger that they're afraid of. So the brain
Yes.
will keep them from achieving the thing that will get them there. So they don't have to think about it.
Love it. Okay, let me ask a question because so this is making sense. And I'll even say when I was writing my book, I had periods of resistance and periods of time where I was like, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write, and it wasn't coming. And I realized during that process, it's like if I'm not writing from a place of flow, I just need to step back and
Right.
come back to it again. But what I'm hearing in just in this last segment where you're chatting through is that there was an avoidance of an emotion that they weren't ready to feel. With a lot of this criteria and some of these tricks,
Yeah.
do you find that many of them are tied to the ability to feel and acknowledge and name an emotion?
So a lot of times our resistance can come up because of an emotion. And I'm
Mhm.
going to kind of talk a little bit about it and let me know
Yeah.
if it kind of
Yeah,
aligns with your questions.
sure.
So emotions are painful. They are
They can be.
extremely
Yeah,
painful. In fact, the science and studies say that emotional pain can be just as severe as physical pain.
I
And
believe that.
so we all have a defense mechanism, right?
Mhm.
And that defense mechanism is designed to protect us, right? But what is it actually trying to protect us from? Is it protecting us from mistakes, failure, rejection, death? My personal belief is that at the most basic fundamental level, it's protecting us from pain, whether that's physical pain, mental pain, or emotional
Emotion.
pain.
Mhm.
Yeah, emotions are painful. And so the defense mechanism doesn't necessarily reason or use logic. It's a simple on off switch. Wherever there is pain or potential for it, block it. So if we're trying to do something that might lead to painful emotions like
Mhm.
rejection, negative criticism, feedback, the brain will prevent us from doing it. So, this example for the book writing would be eventually the brain knows once a book is done, it needs to be shared or put out there. And if it thinks that it'll receive feedback and criticism, or and the more sensitive a person is to feedback and criticism and rejection, the more resistance will rise and the more the brain will prevent us from moving forward. In doing so, it'll make it much harder. So, a lot of times when we're not in flow, it could be because at that moment there's just so much resistance. The brain is like, we got to slow this person's progress.
Yeah.
And it'll create feelings where thoughts aren't coming through. It's harder to push through. Then we get that chatter of, is this really going to work? Are people going to like it? Who am
Yeah.
I to write it? All of these things start coming up that slows progress even more. And it's all
Absolutely.
because a part of the brain believes that we shouldn't let this person do it. And the reason it does is because it went through the criteria and it said, oh, this person's belief is they can't do it. Okay. They don't really have the habit for it. Their self image is not in line. And also, this person's sensitive to
Criticism.
what people think. And this is a big endeavor. So, the more sensitive a person is to what others think, the more what they're doing puts them in front of people, the the bigger that resistance is.
Yeah,
And again, I want to reiterate, these are just some criteria. There's a lot more criteria.
sure. Okay, so let's chat through. So you talked about two different sides of the brain. The desires and wants is one side of the
Yeah.
brain. And I love that because I get divine downloads all the time of things that I want to do and images of things that I'm doing in the future and that type of thing. And I do feel that resistance on the other side. So, do we connect the two sides of the brain, or what are like the go to strategies to overcome the resistance or trick the resistance and be able to move forward?
Yeah. So the first thing a person needs to understand is understand how the resistance is showing up.
Yeah.
That's because, like I said, when resistance tells you, or when the resistance stops you, it's not telling you that it's going to stop you. If self-image is the culprit, it's not saying, "Hey, Molly, this book that you're trying to write, well, it kind of goes against our self-image, or it
Yeah.
might damage the self-image we're holding, so I can't let you do it." Or that thing that you're trying to do, well, it goes against our habit, so we're just going to stand here and do nothing. Resistance doesn't do that. It shows up in manipulative tricks, and I gave a couple of examples of the tricks, and it helps to kind of under to be aware of how it's showing up. And I said some of the tricks are pretty obvious when we're in video games, media, doom scrolling, even drugs, alcohol, and things like that. We
Right.
know we should be doing something. So once we can realize we're doing something else, we should be doing something else that we're in resistance. Or when we see these other tricks, we know we're in resistance.
Right.
Now, the challenge of resistance is like, what is causing it? It's not so easy because the human brain is extremely complex.
Right.
In fact, when you think about it, we're living in a time with millions of coaches and therapists who are trying to study and understand the brain, and we're really just scratching the surface of it. In fact, I'm sure some of your listeners are pretty big into personal development and they haven't heard this concept really, or some of the criterias and even tricks of resistance because there's so much complexity. So it's not always easy to hone in on the criterias,
Sure.
but it doesn't so much matter as long as we pay attention to the tricks. Now, as
Okay.
far as the criterias go, so how do we like overcome the resistance? It really helps to understand what's holding us back.
Right.
Because a lot of times when I talk about resistance, people are like, well, how does someone get over it? Well, there isn't no simple or cookie cutter solution because if there was, I would be a billionaire and be able to get over it. And the
Sure.
reason there's no cookie cutter solution is because you got to work on the criteria that's holding you back. If it's your habit, then we work on developing new habits. If
Right.
it's limiting beliefs, we got to work on the beliefs. If
Got it.
it's facing something bigger, we've got to work on that. And what's interesting is what helps with one area could actually make the other area worse. So this is what makes
Oh, make it
those,
worse?
yeah. So if we're working on one area, it can actually not be helpful to another area. That's why cookie cutter solutions don't work. And I'll give a great example.
Please.
So a lot of people, let's just say there's an advice somebody's talking about that will help you move past your block.
Okay.
It'll work for one person and it won't work for another person.
Right.
So right now in personal development, a lot of the conversations around what's holding you back is limiting beliefs. That's one of
Yeah.
the things that I always hear all the time.
Sure.
And then they'll give you a technique to overcome limiting beliefs, and one person will be able to move forward with what they're doing, but the other person will be stuck still. Well, for the other person, it's because limiting beliefs wasn't the issue. It was some other criteria. So they did what the technique to overcome limiting beliefs would have done, but they're still stuck because that wasn't their issue. So it didn't really help them.
Right.
And in some respects, it could actually be detrimental because if they're applying one thing and that's not their issue, then it could actually make things worse. I know this is a little bit more complicated, but what I tell
Sure.
people is I don't make the rules. I just help people follow them. If a person is
Okay.
stuck, we got to work within the boundaries of how the brain works
Yeah.
and how it holds us back. But there
Awesome.
is two simple things that are pretty universal that could be very effective.
Let's talk about them.
Yeah. One is self-talk. And for those who don't know, self-talk are statements that you say or repeat to yourself of the changes that you want to have or have happen in life. For example, let's say I wanted to improve my memory. I would repeat statements like, I have an excellent memory. I easily remember names, dates, facts, presentations, podcasts, and more.
Yeah.
And on the surface, it may not seem like repeating such a simple statement could actually do all that much, especially if we've struggled with memory, especially if we have all these resistance and stuff. But it's huge. And the reason it is because our words are powerful. They actually go into our mind and create our not only reality, but how we show up in that reality. Like it
Yeah.
actually comes from words.
Yeah.
And if we think about it, when we go back to when we are growing up, a lot of the things, a lot of the resistance the brain was forming as we are growing up didn't actually come from us trying something or things not working or actually getting physical evidence. It just came from words. Teachers saying that we can't sit still, parents saying our work
Yes.
isn't good,
Yep.
bullies. A lot of this is from peers and bullies making fun of us and laughing at us. All of those were creating the walls in our life.
That's
So as we become adults, we just think, oh, yeah, this is just natural. Of course I can't do things. But we didn't realize it was these words that were nailing the coffin to our grave. But if words have the power to bring us down, they actually have the natural ability to bring us up.
right.
The only challenge is the way the brain works, it puts more weight on the negative than the positive. So it can take up to 5 to 10 positives to neutralize a
A
negative.
negative.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. We do have a negativity bias and we look
Yes.
through the lens of that negativity bias. So in order to counteract that 5 to 10 times with a positive statement to
Yeah.
counteract the negative, that makes sense.
Yeah. So let's just give an example. You're getting dressed up to go to a party. Yeah. And you want people to know if you look good. Four people say, you look great. And one person say, not so good. Your mind's gonna be like, what? What's wrong? What's not so good? What should I pick? Blah
And
blah.
you're going to camp out on that negative statement, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
So we need like another 5 to say, no, you look fine to neutralize that.
Yeah.
In fact, going back to the example of writing books and stuff, being an author, being privy to other people who are authors, especially people who are big name authors, it's amazing. But for a lot of even big name authors, the sting of a negative review is too much. They could receive, 100 positive reviews, but that sting is so painful that they don't even look at their own reviews. They have to have other people look at it.
Yeah.
And that's how I was in the beginning. When I was putting my stuff out there, I'd get positive feedback, and then one negative, it was like it just triggered this pain, like, and sometimes even anger, like, who is this person to say that? And although I had enough evidence to say that it shouldn't matter, it still mattered.
Sure.
And this is where self talk comes in because we can repeat these positive statements. We
Yeah.
can easily turn one negative by repeating 10 statements. And the more we repeat the statements of the direction we want to go, the more those statements seep into our mind and rewire our brain to have
Yeah.
us move into that direction. So it doesn't matter what the reason of resistance is, those statements is rewiring things to move us forward. And in that process, helping to break down those resistance. So this is why I say sometimes it doesn't really matter because as long as we're looking at the tricks of resistance, how our behavior is showing up, we can tell that we're in resistance. And
Yeah.
if we use something like self-talk, it can move us in that direction without having to do too much psychoanalysis and all of that stuff. So that's
Right.
one way.
Love that.
Yeah. And we can use self-talk in a lot of ways. So I'm a huge proponent of self-talk. I have self-talk in so many areas of my life and areas I want to develop. For example, I love doing salsa and bachata. And in the beginning, I was pretty terrible. But I started repeating statements like, I am an excellent dancer. I learn and pick up moves easily. And I started becoming a better dancer. I used to not do too many podcasts, and I wasn't a really good communicator. I became very skilled at the written word,
Mm.
especially with my resistance, making me want to continue writing more books. But the verbal word, I was not quite as fluent, meaning I
Mhm.
stuttered and stammered. And in fact, what I had in my head was really what came out of my mouth. So I started repeating, I am an excellent communicator. I easily communicate my thoughts, ideas, feelings, experiences, and more. And
Yeah.
that helped me to become more articulate. And I do it a lot, like my morning routine. I had a morning routine, wouldn't wake up in time. I have a self-talk statement. I quickly jump into my morning routine every morning. And now I can get out of bed. So self-talk can be really powerful. All we have
Love
to
it.
do is just think about the direction, turn it into a statement, and then repeat that statement all the time.
Love it.
The other is to understand how the person takes action. So what I mean by that is some
Yeah.
people are really good at getting excited about a lot of things, but they don't start. Other people are
Yeah.
good at starting, but then they fall off.
They don't finish. Right.
Yeah. And other people are good at making progress, but right before they get to the end, they sabotage themselves.
Right.
This is where they might get sick, get into an accident, and things like that. And then some people are actually good at getting to the finish, but they don't continue doing what got them to the finish. So then they fall off. And this is where your yo-yo dieting comes in.
Absolutely.
And so I have a solution for each of these. So if a person is good at getting excited about a lot of things but never starting, for them it's really important to pick one and cut out all the rest. Whatever,
Focusing
yeah,
on the one. Okay.
singular focus. So no matter what other wants your brain is producing,
Mhm.
don't think about, worry about, or consider them until the first is started and finished.
Got it. Okay.
For the people who are good at starting, but then they stop, I give them a technique for meditation. So I'm sure you've done meditation.
I love every day. Every day.
So if we take all the different kinds of meditation, it comes down to two main forms. One is either we're trying to keep our head clear of thoughts, or the other is we're trying to hold on to a specific thought or image.
Right.
But it's actually impossible to keep our heads clear the whole time or hold on the whole time. But that's not the goal. The goal is if you fall off, you jump right back in.
That's right.
So for the people who are good at starting, but they fall off, use this method of just jump right back in. And when you
Yeah.
fall back off, jump right back
in.
in. Yeah,
Okay.
don't go into this drama like, oh, I can never stick with anything. It's like once you notice you fell off, just jump right back in.
Love it. Okay. Keep going.
So for the people who are good at getting to the finish, and I know a lot of people who have good discipline and drive, but no matter what goal it is, they'll get almost to the finish, and then for some reason they won't finish through. And it could be on many levels. It could be with the diet. It could be coursework. I know people will spend 4 years going through college, and like the last semester, they're like, you know what? They don't need to finish college, and they'll stop, and then the thing that they were going for, they can't do now.
Right.
And then works on a lot of levels, is that it's really important to build the muscle to finish things.
Right.
So we can build the muscle for starting things. So like we're good at starting. We can build the muscle for sticking with things.
Right.
But for certain people, they have to build the muscle to actually finish things. Like the body just needs to know what it feels like to take something from start to finish.
Yeah.
And because they've never done that before, to the brain it's too uncomfortable finishing something, so it'll sabotage them right before they get to the end. And for such people, they have to understand they need to do whatever humanly possible to make sure they get to the finish line. My book, my concentration and speed reading books, you see,
Yeah.
2 books. I took on the audacious goal of writing 2 books at the same time, and both books became much bigger than what I initially intended, and it ended up taking me 2 years to finish it. And there was many moments where I'm just like, why am I doing this? It's like kind of taking away my life, the pleasure of life, the things I could be doing, the time I could be spending with. But I stuck with it because I knew I had to finish those books
Yeah.
so I could finish the other things in my life. So I, willpower to make sure I got those done. And since those books, I almost always finish everything I start. And what's really good about it is because of the experience I went through and making sure I finished it, I never wanted to start something that I didn't feel like I could get to the end. So I wasn't getting stimulated by all these things because in some ways,
Yeah.
the trauma of forcing myself to finish it made me much more conscious about what I took on.
Interesting.
And then for the people who are good at getting to the finish, but they don't continue, it's for them to realize that success is harder to keep than to achieve. Like success is already hard to achieve. Like it's just hard, when we're doing something new, going through that doubt, the pain of building a habit and the routine, all that. And then we think that once we get to the finish, it'll get easier. But for those people, it actually gets harder because now
Yes.
that inner motivation and drive is no longer there.
That's
Now
right.
they need to find it. And if they can understand that, it could be enough to be like, oh, yeah, I got to still continue putting in work to make sure I continue moving forward.
That's right.
So these are two simple ways that work in a lot of different areas, and a lot of different causes of resistance.
Yeah.
One is self-talk. The other is using this model of how we start things.
Yeah.
And that could be a good primer for helping people get over the resistance.
I love that.
Though, like I said, the topic of resistance is quite deep,
It is.
and it really does help to narrow in on the exact criteria. And that's just take a moment to plug myself, not because I want to
Please.
plug my work, but this might be a good time in case somebody wants deeper. Is I did develop a technique that helps disengage the defense mechanism so I can take people into their unconscious to really see what their resistance is. It's too much to talk about in this podcast, but
Sure.
if they wanted to do that, they can reach out to me at mentor@kamknight.com.
Love it. Okay. So if
Yeah.
somebody listening recognizes themselves in some of these examples of resistance, what would be their next best step to move forward?
As I mentioned, there's three parts to the resistance equation. There's a want, there's a resistance, and then there's the tricks of resistance.
Yes.
So it's really important to understand how the resistance shows up,
Sure.
how the avoidance of behavior is coming up. And as I mentioned, now I'm at a point where that anything I'm doing that's not moving the needle forward in my goals and activities, I just assume to be a trick of resistance.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's okay. So you just make the assumption and so you don't have to deep dive into it, but if it's removing you from the path to achieving what you're working towards.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's
Yeah.
fascinating. Okay,
Yeah.
good.
So
Love it.
so a lot of times I'll have this like desire to go travel somewhere or meet someone or whatever. I'm like, oh, why is this desire coming up? Because I have a list of goals and none of those are in line. Could it be a trick? And more than
Could be a trick.
likely it is. So
Yeah.
even if it's not, if it's anything you're doing, so the tricks is important. What you call the resistance part is important too, but because the brain is complex, it does help to work with a person like myself to help them understand
Sure.
it. So let's talk a little bit about the wants, because as I mentioned, our own wants can be a hindrance in achieving them. I know it's hard to believe, but our own wants can create challenges to achieving that want. And that is because the part of the brain that creates wants and desires is completely unrestrained. So it's creating wants one after another.
Sure.
And you can think of this part of the brain, which I call the wanting mechanism, as simply an on off switch that gets flipped based on certain cues. So a new gadget comes out, we want it. Someone's wearing a nice dress, we just have to see it. It's like, oh, I want that dress. Most anything we see on television, we want because it's like it's on television and it's like the colors are really nice and bright and the
Sure.
advertisements make a really great job. So, as I mentioned, the part of the brain that creates a want, it's not designed to see if a want is fulfilling, if it's achievable, if it's safe. It just creates wants. And so a person can have all sorts of wants and desires coming up in their life. And now we're living in a time where there's so many options, and our options have options where the wanting mechanism is like overly stimulated. So we're just getting a lot of desires for all sorts of things. And the best place to start is with our wants to know if this want is something I truly want, or did it just get triggered or stimulated and now I'm in this like intense euphoric feelings that make me think that's how I'm going to feel once I get it. Does that
Right.
make sense?
It
They're judgment.
does.
Yeah.
How do you tell the difference though?
So the wants are challenging as well. And I want to give a couple examples of what I mean before we can kind of get into that. We have what's called a an overactive want, this is where a person's brain creates all sorts of desires all the time.
Sure.
In many ways, it's referred to as a shiny object syndrome, where they see something and they want it, and they hear something and they want that too. Oftentimes, they don't have to hear or see anything. Their brain is pulling them in all sorts of directions,
Right.
where before they can even start on one want, they're being pulled towards other wants to chase. So if a person identifies with this, people who have a overactive wanting mechanism, when they hear me say this, they're like, oh yeah, I've got that. So for them, it's going to be really important to ground and contain their mechanism. Otherwise, it'll pull them in all sorts of directions.
Right.
And for that person, it's going to be important to go back to what I said, pick one want and cut out all the rest. So I know that you, Molly, as well as your listeners, have experienced moments where you wanted something really bad and things
Yeah.
weren't moving along. But as soon as you let it go, things began to fall into place.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's because of this principle. And so when someone is dealing with a strong want where they want something so bad, they actually can't even think about what they need to do to achieve it because that want is just in their awareness.
Overpowering.
Yeah. It helps to reduce the want. So in these situations, about reducing the want.
Sure.
And so these are some of the challenges of our wants. And they're kind of been talked about throughout history in one way or another without this framework. Because like when we look at the quote, you can't have your cake and eat it too, it's talking about this nature of our conflicting wants. It's
That's right.
wanting one thing and we do have it. We have pain for not having the other. And it's like,
Yes.
well, what the heck? So these are some of the challenges that wants, resistance, and tricks create. So to circle back to your question, so a person understands their resistance and like what should they do? It really starts with our wants. We have to really look at our want and see, is this something we really want, or the brain just triggers stimulating a desire for it and
Right.
creating these euphoric feelings like my life is going to be so great when I have it.
Right.
And once it can narrow in, understand if it is something they truly want, then they can move on to the next steps of resistance and tricks of resistance. Because if we just start with the tricks or just the resistance, it's easy to kind of get lost in our wants because our wants are really unruly. Once they get triggered, it's difficult to release.
Yeah.
And once they get triggered, they create such overpowering feelings that our life is going to be so great when we have it. And then once we start doing the work to get it, those feelings can go away and the motivation can go away as well.
Yeah.
And so these are some of the, like I said, the struggles our wanting mechanism creates. So we really have to work on that want first before we
Yeah.
move to the rest.
That's so fascinating. I think back over the last several years where I've accomplished quite a bit and I didn't necessarily relish the process. So I'll give you an example. So I ran a triathlon. I did a triathlon.
Yeah.
And I thought, wouldn't it be so cool to be able to call myself a triathlete? So it was like an identity thing. And I never thought that I could ever do it. And I'm one of those people where it's like, you're not going to tell me I can't do it. I'm going to go do
Yeah.
it. And, so it was like proving to myself that I could do it.
Yeah.
But I remember crossing the finish line and I was like, it didn't have the excitement. It didn't have what I thought it would have.
Once you got there.
Yes. Once I got there and I was like, okay, that's interesting. It was not like a depression, but it was deflating.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
it's because you went after a want that wasn't fully aligned. And you
Yeah.
probably chased it not for the right reasons because you said, your exact words were, because I don't want people to tell me what I can do.
That's right.
So it wasn't you were going after it to get the feelings of what being a triathlete meant. In some ways, it was because you don't want people to tell you what to do. And that's what I mean by the challenges of our wants. We can have a want or desire, and when
Right.
we're going after it, feel like, oh yeah, this is going to be great once I achieve it. But when we achieve it, it's like want in some ways.
Yes, it is.
And Molly, like we're living in a culture and society that it's so prevalent. Like everyone is,
Yes.
because we were conditioned to work hard in school, to get good
Yes.
grades, to get a good job. And once we get
Yes.
the good job, we were expecting this like,
Happy life.
yeah. And then it's even worse. And it's not with just that, but so many other areas. We'll
Oh my
watch a
gosh.
television commercial that that creates this image of like how great it'd be if we were fit and attractive. You sign up for a gym membership, months and months we go, we get that body, and it's people aren't treating us any better.
I don't feel any different. Maybe I look
Yeah.
better or whatever, but it's mind-boggling because I just think about in my life, and I've got 2 adult-ish kids, 19 and 21,
Yeah.
and they're, experimenting and figuring out what they wanna do with their lives, and there's so many societal messages that
So
say,
many.
"If you have this or if you can do that, then you are gonna feel a certain way," and
Yeah.
the reality is that you can choose to feel that way today. You
Without
don't need to achieve in order to do that. I wanna ask you because I know a lot of listeners, and myself included here, have gone through seasons of life where we really struggle with needing external validation in order to feel worthy. And I went through a huge chunk of my corporate career where I poured everything into that job, into that company, because that's where I got positive reinforcement, positive
yeah.
feedback. People thought I was great. People thought I did a good job. And I realized when I switched companies and I didn't have that coming in, I was like, oh, no, like,
Yeah.
my self-esteem and my self-worth is based on what other people think of me.
Yeah.
Something's not right here. So, what trick is that? What resistance is that? How, if you've worked with people who have had that in the past, like, how do you unwind that?
So that's so now we're kind of now we're looking into where our wants are actually even coming from, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of our
Yes.
wants come from these deeper feelings that we have.
Yeah.
So if we have feelings of not enough,
Yeah.
then it triggers a feeling to perform.
Yes.
So a lot of
Yes.
people are burning out because there's this inner push to perform. And they don't even know where this inner push is coming from, but they just know they need to perform. They need to do things at a high level or a lot of stuff. And it's because it's undeserving or not enough that's coming up. And then other people like the attention of others. When we get attention, like when we look good, like here I'm dressed in a suit and you're dressed up
Yeah.
as well, and
Yeah.
we get positive feedback and it feels
Sure.
good. And so a lot of people that want for that nice body or that nice job or car isn't for that car, job, whatever, but is because their drive for attention, acceptance, and approval.
Yes.
So these are the deeper things that are going inside of us that is creating a lot of these wants.
Yeah.
And how do we unpack that? It's not easy. So that
No.
technique I talked to you about, I'll talk about it a
Yeah.
little bit more. I talked about how I found a way to disengage a defense mechanism so I can take people to their unconscious and
Yes.
work through their blocks
Yep.
and their different various emotions that come up that create the challenges in their life. But when we start going deeper and deeper into the deeper layers,
Yeah.
it all comes down to these core beliefs that we have, such as I'm not enough, I'm too much, I'm alone and on my own, I don't matter, I'm broken, or people equals danger. So these are some of these core beliefs that almost all of us
Yes.
have that's driving it.
Yeah.
And then when we go even deeper than that, it all stems from loneliness. So this is what I mean by that. We humans are pack animals. We evolved to live and survive in a pack. As a
Yes.
result, we develop a lot of characteristics to make sure that we stick to the pack. And one of them is the pain of loneliness. Loneliness is painful, it's extremely painful. We all experienced it in COVID.
Right. Oh, yes.
Yeah. And that pain is so strong to make sure that we stay around people. Now, the stronger the pain, the more loneliness a person has. And when I use that word, I mean like a really deep, at core level loneliness
Yes.
that we don't even notice. The more their brain causes them to push themselves to get the attention, affection, and approval of others, as well as to be seen, known, heard, and matter. So a lot of the people that you see on stage and whatever
Sure.
is because they have this strong desire for attention, affection, and to be seen and to be heard, and it's stemming
Yeah.
from a deeper loneliness. And the more that loneliness will compromise our beliefs, our values, and who we are, to make sure that we stay around people. It really all stems down to the attention, affection, and approval we were seeking from our mom and dad that we didn't get.
Right.
And it's still running us, and it's
Yeah.
transmuted in all these ways, and it got more complex because of the advertisements and television we were watching and all of
Yes.
that. And
Yes.
so we kind of have to work on it at that level.
Wow. Gosh, this is amazing. Okay. Where can our listeners go to learn more about your work and your books and all of that?
So I've got 3 gifts for your listeners. One,
Let's.
they've got a guide called End Procrastination and Sabotage. It's a deep dive into this topic,
Awesome.
and it talks about the wanting mechanism as well as the resistance, as well as the tricks of resistance, and gives a couple examples.
Great.
So that's one. The second guide, it's called Prompt Engineering for Your Mind. So AI is getting pretty big, but the brain was the original ChatGPT, and you can actually ask it questions, and it'll give you answers, and it'll help you move in a better direction.
Love it.
It's actually pretty wild how this mechanism works, and they can get that. And the third one is how to build skills and habits in your sleep, and it's really with self-talk that you can literally build skills and habits laying down if you use the right words. And this guy talks about that. And you can get all 3 on my website,
Yes. Okay.
kamknight.com. So
Okay.
that's KAMKNIGHT.com. And if anybody wants to do the one-on-one work with me, just email me at mentor@kamknight.com, and I can
Love it.
kind of tell you how it works. But it's honestly the deepest dive you can do into your own unconscious.
Love it.
And we do the work in people's unconscious mind. It's pretty wild stuff. So
I love it. Oh, Cam, thank you so much. We will put the link to your website to get those resources in the show notes, so be sure to check that out. Hey,
yeah,
friends, if this episode helped you see your own patterns a little bit clearer, please pass it on. Please share this episode and help us spread this mission of reaching people who are stuck in the funk. And if you want ongoing support and community to take your next best step, please come join us in the Next Best Step Facebook community. We would love to have you there. We'll see you next time.